So what is your stance on immigration?
Okay, so my stance is that immigration is a net benefit to society. I think that immigration brings good things, and I think that immigration can bring bad things. So I think that the goal of a government should be to enact a policy that capitalizes on the good things and mitigates the bad things.
Wow, what a strong take.
Do you agree that
Sure.
with the right policy that you can mitigate enough of the economic aspects of immigration to make them net positives, to be a consistent net positive to Western economies? Do you agree with that? That with the right, so that means that I would be in favor. I think that in places like Sweden and maybe even in places like Germany, maybe the welfare state is a little bit too generous, especially for newly coming laborers, right? Maybe you scale back on some of that a little bit, but that with the right policy, I think that immigration, and I mean, Germany just had, record-breaking GDP things for over the last 5 years, right? I think that you can argue that immigration can be a net positive to society and economically in the long run, right? Do you agree with that?
This is a good take. Immigration absolutely can be a net positive to American society under the right system. The real problem is a bad immigration structure operating inside a bad economic system. If you want immigration to be a consistent net positive, then it has to be based on actual contribution. That means strong vetting, background checks, financial checks, work history, education, certifications, skills, and evidence that the person is likely to produce more than they consume. It means giving people opportunities to prove value gradually. In that framework, immigration can benefit a country, but that's not the system we have. Our current immigration system is layered on top of a broken monetary and welfare structure. We already live in an economy distorted by central banking, inflation, debt spending, artificial credit expansion, high taxes, and constant upward redistribution toward those with the most capital and assets. On top of that, we flood parts of the labor market with more workers, especially at the lower end, and pretend this is automatically good because aggregate output goes up.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like, for everything I read, it seems like when government is willing to spend money on integrating people, and places like Germany, I think, are a good example, you get a lot of laborers coming in that help to ease friction in some of your markets, that function as laborers in your market, that help the economy overall and stimulate it and end up being a net positive on everything.
Aggregate increase is not the right standard. Obviously, total output rises when you import more labor and more consumers. That proves almost nothing by itself, though. The real question is whether the increase is proportional. Does life actually improve per person? Do real wages rise? Do prices fall relative to income? Do services improve enough to justify the extra pressure on the system? Do the people already here experience a real gain in the standard of living? Or does the economy just get bigger? That's the issue. Under the current system, immigration often becomes a net negative, not because immigrants are inherently bad for an economy, but because they're entering a perverse structure. Welfare incentives, political hiring incentives, DEI pressures, subsidy structures, and legal distortions all weaken the natural market. Instead of workers assimilating to the productive demands of the market, businesses and institutions are often forced to assimilate to state political priorities. That's why right now, immigration is a net negative.
Borjas claims that while it causes decreases in the wages of the laborers that are directly impacted, that there are other benefits that can be measured as a result of laborers moving into a country. So, for instance, if you have a lot of laborers that move into a job market and they compete with certain laborers, those people might have the opportunity to move into complementary positions. Or because these immigrants are moving in, they cause demand for more products, which causes other industries to go, which those people that are displaced can then take up jobs in. There's a really complicated ecosystem when you have people moving in that causes, labor to shift around, and that markets will respond accordingly.
I don't think
The problem isn't that there's some natural demand for more workers. If there were a real labor shortage, then the market would look very different. It would become a workers' market. Businesses would have to compete harder for labor. They would have to raise wages, improve benefits, offer bonuses, and make jobs more attractive in order to pull more workers in. And only when the domestic labor pool was genuinely exhausted would importing more workers make sense as a way of bringing the market back toward equilibrium. But that's not what we're seeing. Wages aren't rising in the way you would expect from a real labor shortage. A lot of people, especially younger workers and lower skilled workers, are already struggling to get stable, decent paying jobs. And the headline headline job numbers are not enough to prove the market is healthy, because aggregate job postings don't tell you how many of those jobs are serious, how many are actually available, how many are low quality, and how many are effectively ghost jobs posted without a real intent to hire. The labor market can look active on paper while being far worse in practice. We aren't filling a clean shortage. We're shoveling more people into the same economy and forcing the middle class and below to compete harder for bad jobs just to survive.
A lot of them have those issues, but I wouldn't say they're certainly not bringing jobs. I don't think anyone could argue that they're bringing jobs. They're filling jobs, likely, and driving down wages, which hurts the native population and makes the native population less able to consume goods, and
well,
which
but they
in the
also
long
increase
term will hurt the
consumption
economy.
but they also increase the consumption of goods and drive up demand for things like housing.
With what money? They're getting money from the government right now.
Sure, so it's a form of economic stimulus, but they're also generating a service to the economy, assuming they're able to find work and generate some kind of service or whatever that would increase GDP, right?
Immigrants consuming goods and housing is not a point for destiny. It's actually part of the problem. When more people enter a country, they consume food, housing, transportation, and other goods. That increases demand. But increasing demand is not automatically good. It helps the businesses selling those goods, and it helps the owners of assets, but it also pushes prices higher when supply doesn't keep up. That is especially bad for the lower and middle class because they're the ones least likely to own the businesses. So once again, the gains flow upward and the burdens get pushed downward. Destiny treats more economic activity as if that alone proves the policy is working, but it doesn't. A bigger market isn't the same as a better market. If immigrants increase labor competition while also increasing demand for housing and goods, then the lower and middle class will get squeezed from both directions. Also, Destiny talks as if immigrants can just be brought in because there are job openings, and then we'll just hope they find work once they arrive. That is incredibly disorganized and inefficient. In a free market, this would be handled way better. Employers, towns, or communities would work out actual arrangements beforehand. There would be a job lined up, a residence lined up, and some clear structure for integration before the person even arrives. This is because the inviters are now responsible for the risk of bringing in new people, and they'll absorb the cost if they invite the wrong people. So they're motivated to vet thoroughly.
Well, a lot of their argument for voting Trump wasn't that they love him and he's their god emperor. Their argument was simply that if we have an open border with Mexico, the sheer amount of illegal migrants that will come in will inevitably continue to vote themselves more benefits, and they will be forced to pay into a system that is more generous with strangers than it is with themselves and will eventually collapse. And eventually, if you have enough illegal migrants and enough Mexicans come over the border, you will have so many that they will never be able to get a conservative government again that will reel in the spending, because these people are known historically, based on voting records, to continue to only vote Democrat, which appease migrant voters.
Fuck them.